I'm Mr. James.
And I'm Mr. Ritchie.
And we are the educators.
Educated.
Yeah, we get that. We'll get that. It's not a lag time, everybody. Wow, it is Thursday. It's our Thursday. It's just us. It is September 24th. And we are surviving.
We're doing all right. We're doing all right. But the world around us, it seems to be closing in, getting closer a little bit.
Yeah, like some towns are closing. Some schools are closing in some towns.
Some really close schools are closing, like literally the next town over. Entire school district is closed, and doesn't bode well when we have a higher population, one town over. But
and when you're watching a kid in front of you picking their nose under their mask,
so many,
and eating it, or pulling their mask down to bite their nails, and you go, no, put your mask back on, don't do that. And then you're thinking to yourself, the neighboring town just shut down, and what if this situation right here is going to be the shutting down thing? Is it going to take 2 weeks? What's going on? I mean,
a new thing happened for me today. I'm looking at some of the masks that the students are wearing, and there were two in one class that looked fundamentally flawed. Like the person that designed them specifically made them to be least restrictive, not actually like filtering anything. Like one that was like really like an inch away from the kid's nose.
Yeah.
And it's like, all right. And then
it's
one
like a feed bag.
Yeah. And then one that was just like this triangle cloth with string.
Wait a minute, that's a bathing suit used
exactly.
in Brazil or Hawaii or someplace. It's like, yeah.
It was just hanging in front of his face. And so like in the standards, it's got to be tight fitting to the skin.
Yeah.
And they fundamentally fail. So I'm like, all right, well, how do I handle this? Well, I mean, in the moment I didn't know what to do. I have only 30 minutes to, get that class in and out. And so I just noted it and had to go check afterwards. But I did remember that we do have those extra masks to hand out, which is great for those schools that have sourced enough PPE to do that. Not all have. So I'm like, all right, well, next time I got to offer a better one, basically, and hopefully.
We also have those face shield. And I think we have one of those, but I just keep wondering if I can just like quickly put one over the child and be like, there you go.
Yeah, I mean, that will help. It certainly will. But I think that they're less effective than a good fitting cloth mask or even just a paper mask, really, especially for the short term, until they get like wet. Like some of the, they're just.
And of
wet.
course, we're still like a month and a half away from getting the Uber mask to end all masks, which is unfortunate that it's going to take forever to get to us. But
it might be hard to breathe through an N99, but I'm sure there will be some times that I'm glad I have it.
Yeah, I think they send us. So this is something that we both did. It was a Kickstarter thing. I always get confused between Kickstarter and Indiegogo because at one point I was just nonstop go, that's amazing, great, fund that, fund this, fund that. And I end up with like a video game. I end up with a thermometer that I need to plug into my phone. And I'm like, yeah, I really don't need all this stuff. And I had a Bluetooth speaker that sticks in the shower so you can listen to music in the shower. It was crazy loud, but it had some very faulty thin pieces that broke, and I need to resolder, but you need to have like a microscopic soldering iron to do so. But we supported this thing. We have a mask that's being made. It says it's going to be delivered in November. It looks amazing. And they also mentioned to us we have to choose some things to it, but they've kind of made a case now for the N95 over the N99 because they said breathing is going to be incredibly difficult in the N99.
Twice as restrictive.
Yeah, and they said the N95 is great. And of course, we're not to try to get the model that has the breathing tubes or whatever like that, the filter.
With the vents, I'm going to check to see because there's a difference between vented and filtered vented.
Yeah.
Because if there is a medium in with the vented air, then that is exactly what we're looking for.
Yeah.
The vent will help relieve some pressure. And I think the vent structure itself even retains some moisture. But, you know, I have to look at it, see what they do, because the whole purpose, of course, is not to dump your unfiltered breath, you know, on the students, but
Yeah.
or people at the grocery store. But I see a lot of people doing that.
Yeah, and I'm
Yeah.
just hoping we get something that's decent and yeah, hopefully it comes in. I mean, that's the thing. If we do go into this eventual possible lockdown that we're thinking might be inevitable, then are we just going to be stuck with this amazing mask and back
Nowhere to
to,
go.
yeah, we're going to be like, hey, I got a great mask. I guess I can, I mean, yeah, I can go grocery shopping now in any grocery store or any place. I might as well just walk down.
Probably won't wear the face shield portion with, you know.
I don't know. I kind of like that. It kind of
I
looks.
like it, but it's you know, it's intimidating. It looks like a paintball mask.
Well, I mean, they like, oh, no paintballs in here, sir. Like, hey,
Yeah,
if you guys are good, I won't have to use it. So, just
yeah,
making sure. Open carry paintball policy, right?
right. That's right. And
So,
we are talking about all
how's the
this.
world right now? Yeah.
Yeah, because we are talking about all this because we are still in the middle of a global pandemic, deep in the heart of a global pandemic.
Yeah, and probably not. Maybe in the first wave still.
Hmm. It's the second. What did they call it? Like the second push of the first wave, basically. Like it's we never got it under control, so we can't call it a second wave.
Yeah.
But in the world, there was a weekly increase over this day last week of 1.98 million new cases. So these are, I like to mention every week, this isn't total cases. These are just new cases over the last week. And so that is about 60,000 more than last week.
Hmm.
United States, we have a weekly increase of 306,000 new cases, and that's over last week's weekly increase was 261,000.
How many deaths are we up to? Like 200,000 deaths now?
Yeah, that's right. We are at 200,000 deaths in America right now,
Ugh.
and that's really unfortunate. I mean, I remember that was the high mark in one of the estimates given out by the CDC,
Yeah.
you know, a few months ago. And it's unfortunate that we hit the high mark. And this is definitely not slowing down. It's not going to suddenly go away during cold and flu season. So,
Oh, I know. That's the other thing. It's like we just got this quick, it was cold, and we're like, it's here. And then it got warm, and these past few days it's been warm. And
yeah,
you're like, what's going on? And I'm looking at numbers, maybe the weekend it's going to start dipping down a lot, and thinking about, sealing up the house and all this stuff. But then thinking about cold and flu season, which is, this season comes and I'm always like, okay, I'm not touching anything. As it is, I'm kind of a germaphobe about that, but
yep,
this on top of it is like, this is just crazy. There's, I mean, yeah, I think we're taking care of things really well now. I think that's great as far as like spraying every surface, constantly dipping our hands in sanitizer and stuff. But at the same time, we know the students are going home, and we know there's, like we talked before, some people are really lax with hygiene, and something's going to happen, and they're going to be talking, and it's going to find a way to spread. And what is it? That's the thing. No one ever had a test that they like a litmus test, lick this thing. Oh yeah, I've got norovirus right now.
right.
That's why I feel sick to my stomach and have all these problems. Okay, great. Oh, I have the flu that's going around. Oh, I have a standard cold, normal cold that we have,
That should exist, right? Like
I
a
know.
over-the-counter flu test, over-the-counter cold test. I don't know. That's a market right there, Like I'm surprised that hasn't been tapped.
Yeah, and because eventually, with so many people working hard for this vaccine and everything, they're going to have tests for that.
Yeah.
For this, like just sold over the counter. Be like, here, COVID-19 test. They go, does it also test for blah blah blah? No, it doesn't. We still don't have a test for that. It's been 1,000 years. We're still working on that. We can't get that one. For some reason, it's
Right.
just can't nail that one down. But if we work really hard, we can probably, we've got this one.
Right.
It's like, yeah.
And so for those listeners that might be listening in from other places, either in the country or the world, so we live in Maine, which is a very seasonal state. And right now we are in a period which is called locally, we call it Indian summer, where the temperature's already dropped. And right now we are back at summertime temperatures for a couple of days a week, sometimes a couple of weeks if we're lucky. And right now today it was actually pretty warm, but for the next couple of weeks, the only thing the temperature is going to do is drop. And it's not going to be long till it's 20 degrees at nighttime
Average day
in October.
Yeah.
And then after that, we go down to negative 14 sometimes.
Yeah.
That's the coldest I've seen locally. And at least once or twice a year we get down to at least negative 10. So we are looking forward to these days where you just don't go outside, and if you do, it actually generates more mucus, more fluids that you have to go inside, you have to blow your nose, like, just because of the temperature differential, and that's just going to help increase the spread of this disease, especially in someone that perhaps isn't sick from COVID, but perhaps it's caught in their respiratory tract, and the nose runs, they blow their nose, hopefully they wash their hands, that whole thing. Because here in Maine, we have a weekly increase of 230, and that's about, 23 more than the increase from last week. So that's, we're heading up. And last week we had 207. That was above the week before. So this is now a 3. I wish I could remember before then, but perhaps a 4-week trend. And yeah, it's daunting when, like we said earlier, that the school system next to ours gets shut down completely, all remote. And, we're going to probably talk about it a little bit, but, the impact on a teacher when you just assume that we're just going to go back all remote.
Yeah. And the other thing is, it's this other town that got shut down was a town where I literally went to that town. I do my grocery shopping only in that town because I leave the 2 towns that, I work in or, live in as well, because I feel this other town is just a safer, it just feels like it's a, and yet that's exactly what happens. It's it's everywhere. And wear a mask, please. Wear a mask. Wash your hands.
Wash your hands.
But let's go on to some science in the news, because that might make us happy. Or
science in the news makes me happy.
Let's take a little off that.
Yeah, let's take a look at what we got. So
one of the things I saw was life on Earth may have begun in hot springs.
Interesting.
So
now, I think that this is it's further evidence probably of a pretty commonly assumed hypothesis, is that, like, we call it the primordial soup.
Yeah.
Where there was just this soup in these hot springs of all these minerals, swirling and churning is what we imagine or whatever. But somehow all of a sudden one of those chemicals made a copy of itself and kept on replicating and set off that chain reaction, and perhaps, like, I know there's some debate if viruses are even alive. And, like, it's interesting to think about, like, because crystals grow, right? Crystals grow, you feed them new nutrients and they grow, but they don't have a metabolism. So therefore we don't call them alive. Virus, they don't really have a metabolism. They, but bacteria kind of does. It's got it's a cell structure that has these things, working inside of it, where a virus is not. And so I'm just interested to see what the first life was. I wonder if it was viral, like if we actually are born of viruses, because that's an interesting concept as well.
Yeah, and I think what their big thing too, they're looking at comparing this to places like on other planets and stuff like that, thinking that this sort of area, like they found out they reported something in December 2019 that complex molecules can form in these hot springs, which are laden with sulfur and just materials that were like, no, things can't survive in that. And then they find, well, something's surviving in it. But look at the type of life, the life that lives off of sulfur rather than,
Yeah.
we're living off of carbon and things like that. And
Like the creatures that live in the deep sea vents that
yeah,
are like at boiling temperature, but the pressure keeps the water from boiling, and they're living and like just as any creature or plant or whatever would on the surface. It's pretty interesting to think about. That's pretty cool.
yeah. And it gives me, I kind of, we talked about this, the learning about life on our planet is going to help us understand life on other planets, because this is basically our litmus test for anyone else. We've got to
And
try it here.
and like so it'll make us understand about life on this planet, life on another planet, but also our lives on another planet is what this research does. So like I think that that's an important thing, is like getting off the planet and going somewhere, understanding enough about it that we can see how life might be spread. And like for instance, if humans can't make it somewhere, something I want to talk about some other time, but should we seed a planet with life? Is that ethical? Is that right? Things like that. But yeah, it's interesting that if we can trace back to how life began, we would then be able to create life, and so that would be pretty interesting.
I can always see it too. Like if you find another planet or a moon of some planet, someplace that has all the right ingredients except for one, and then we can add that one in, and a chain reaction creates something that, like, we build an atmosphere for a planet, and being like, wow, that's all it took was that missing ingredient. Just like a lot of people speculate about the transpermia for planet Earth, something from space landed on Earth and it created a chain reaction which made life happen.
I entertain that idea as much as basically the geological genesis, of having life actually start here. But the idea that life started here also kind of makes it seem like life is even more possible in other places. So I'm hoping that life started here, independently of other places, because that seems more widespread. However, transpermia seems more limiting. Like they probably picked this planet specifically or something or even if it was an accidental, like a meteor strike, it just seems more unlikely that there's more of it out there. And
it's like looking for a mistake somewhere. Like we only want the things that a mistake made it happen, like by chance. And I talk about that in my music class. I said, you can make music by chance. Either you can be in charge of it or it can just happen, but it's really hard if something just happens to happen to recording it at the same time.
Right.
So that's
that's
next
cool.
thing in the news that's kind of, disheartening, but we know this is basically happening, is global warming is going to lead to irreversible Antarctic ice melting.
And Antarctic ice is enormous.
Yeah.
There's a lot. So, like, unfortunately, some people just might be like, yeah, so what? Well, I mean, that is what's going to set off. Obviously, the sea level rises. A lot of people think that that's it. All right, sea level rises, boom, whatever. Who cares? We move further up mountains or something. But the problem is that it is fresh water, and the fresh water offsets the salinity balance that's in the ocean, which drives currents. And there's demonstrable evidence out there. We've been researching the ocean for as long as we've been alive, and when the salinity changes, so do the currents. Currents help drive temperature differentials. Like they bring warm water from places and bring it to where there was cold. Those shift all of a sudden, and it will change local climates. And so, this is, again, it's, some people are like, oh yeah, we've heard this, for 30 years,
Oh,
but
yeah.
just further evidence that this is what's happening. Because there's some people that don't believe it's happening. So we've got to keep constantly doing this research to prove to them, no, this is real. This is real.
Yeah. We are in an ice age.
Yeah, we are.
And yet
Yep.
it's, and some people are like, well, we're transitioning out of the ice age. Yeah, but transitions out of ice ages
Mhm.
haven't always looked good for life living on the planet.
And they always happened at a steadier rate.
Yeah.
And it's like, so we were on the downward slide, and now it's like warmer than it's ever been, or
Yeah.
like at least the change is greater than it's ever gone. And the CO2 parts per million is just it was on its way down and spike. Like we can sample the air with relative ease and accuracy. It's so not even a contested idea that this is happening. And unfortunately, we're still working on, getting that known by everybody. But when we're also arguing that the Earth isn't flat, and that windmills don't cause cancer, and things like that, when we're arguing,
I know. Yeah.
it's hard to argue these other things, because it's like there's a whole baseline that we're not even at yet. So
Yeah.
me and you, we're working towards it. We're trying to help the next generation, or not even the next generation, but the generation after the next, really.
Yeah.
We're trying to help them figure this out and make up for all the mistakes that we're making for them.
You have to pay for someone else's mistakes.
Yeah.
Well, another thing, another science of the news, Brazilian city, and this is interesting because it's a city in Brazil that had a bad devastation from COVID-19, may have reached herd immunity. And I think that's an interesting thing, because this talk of herd immunity all the time. Like,
did you
we
know
want to reach this.
What is the percentage level? Because I can't remember there's a certain percentage level where it's considered herd immunity. I think it's like 60. I mean, I'm thinking 2/3, 66% or something, where the people have antibodies, and it actually starts to.
Yeah, well, this one says the Brazilian city. It's Manaus, or it looks like Manaus.
Yeah.
Sorry for those listeners from Manaus or Manaus that live there.
Please comment and let us know how to pronounce it.
Yeah. City has over 2 million people and had 4.5 times as many deaths as expected that time of year. It says research suggests that the herd immunity developed the city after 44 to 52% of the population was infected.
Interesting. Okay, lower than I thought.
But 44 to 52%. I mean, can you imagine 52% of America, above North America, getting that?
And like I would really love to see, and unfortunately in Brazil, it's hard to. Basically, I wish I could see their lung scans and heart scans, because the amount of after effects is enormous. So if 52% of the population had it, and what percent of those people have lifelong illnesses and blood clotting issues?
And
all
this
this
is the
stuff.
first wave going through there, and how they mentioned, like, yeah, you got about 2 months, 2 to maybe 3 months after you get it, you can get it again.
Yeah.
Maybe that, or maybe it's 6 weeks. I can't quite remember that, but
we don't know for sure yet, and
you
that's
could go through and hit it again. You're like, we got herd immunity, everybody, and then it goes through and hits it again, and they're like, oh no, we're already weak from the first wave. And just how many waves is this thing going to have? And is it going to mutate is this going to be like the new thing? It's,
yeah. It's like that. It's like, I mean, this might be a horrible reference, but like tuberculosis, it's still out there, and like, there's a chance that any of us, like in some interaction with a stranger, suddenly gets tuberculosis. Like, what, it's going to end up like that. It's just going to be like, we're going to get normalized to it eventually, if we can't just work together and stomp it out, before it mutates.
Live like you're on a satellite. Live like you're on a spaceship. I mean, Spaceship Earth, Buckminster Fuller, come on.
Come on.
That's literally what you have to do. Live like you're
Yeah.
on a spaceship. You don't just open the door and let the vacuum of space in. You know, take care of yourself. You realize everything that goes into you has to come out of you, and you have to make sure that everything is the hygiene with that. And it's yeah, that's basically it. We'll do a whole deep dive on that at some point in the
Yeah, I can't
future.
wait for that.
It's probably going to be when we go virtual. Hopefully that
Yeah.
doesn't happen, but
'Cause
yeah.
as of right now, I am putting in so many hours. It's nuts just to keep up. And I know, like, well, specifically in our school, the way that our schedule and rotation works out, supposedly in one more week, I might have some room to breathe. But basically for the next whatever 8 days, I fully expect to be just right out straight.
Yeah.
There's a quote that we have here in Maine, basically meaning I'm so busy I can't even stop to think really. So yeah, but hey, let's talk about some nature. Maybe get our mind off
Yeah.
COVID
Okay.
again.
Last little thing for science in the news part. There's a beaked. It's called a beaked whale. Set the record for the longest dive of a mammal. So almost 4 hours long.
That is amazing. Like I can't hold my breath for 30 seconds usually.
Previously it was 2 hours, but they recorded this for 4 hours. So
It's
yeah,
interesting to
it's
think about how metabolism can keep working, like how you can store enough oxygen, in a gigantic warm-blooded creature that I mean that's an enormous amount of oxygen to be running through while swimming. Those muscles, all those
oh
muscles
yeah.
need that oxygen. It's like it is a pretty incredible thing, and I hope that at least for the nature lovers out there, they realize like that how cool that is. It's like almost amazing to me is like how a hummingbird can even make it from one place to the next with how much energy they expel
Oh yeah.
just in their
Always like
motion. Like
slurping up sugars so it can just keep that
yeah,
little tiny body moving at
it's,
the speed it has to.
and then this gigantic, a beaked whale, which is a pretty large whale, like just can swim for 4 hours.
Yeah.
Like, how cool would that be? I would love to be able to hold my breath for four
Well, they
hours.
do have the interesting thing is because I used to read about people going diving and stuff like that. And of
Hmm.
course, you read about people who got stuck because they'd be
Free divers.
cave diving and stuff like that. And they get
Yeah.
stuck on something and run out of oxygen. And they had to have a mix of oxygen and nitrogen because
Yep.
otherwise, at a certain depth and stuff like that, it was just their body couldn't handle it.
Yep.
And they actually and they had something you could inject into you that would give you 10 minutes, maybe 10 minutes, between 10 minutes and a half an hour. If you were underwater and you couldn't breathe, you could inject this into you as long as you weren't swallowing water. And it would give you a chance
Oh,
to, yeah. And I was like, really? And this was like years ago that I read about this. And
that's amazing.
I was like, that is something that I think everyone should have on them that works at the ocean, works like on the ocean or something. Just have it
Yeah.
as like a little kit that's like right by you, and you just jam your leg with it if you find yourself underwater. And then you're like, I'm underwater for the next half hour. It's funny. I don't actually have to breathe.
I mean, I would buy them recreationally. So,
Yeah. I'm going underwater. Like, wow,
yeah.
it's taking you a
I'll
while
see
to
you in
get
a half
up.
hour. I'm gonna go walk through this lake with some lead weights on my feet.
And
I,
then you
I
have to,
totally.
yeah, and then you have to be like, can you inflate my lungs because they haven't turned on again?
Yeah.
That's the only thing.
Right.
It's like, how is that
Oh man,
working? Your
what a
body's
weird.
so used to these things that we normally do to stay alive that
Yeah.
you probably find yourself gasping like, this is so weird. My body naturally wants to gasp for air, but I don't need it.
Yeah. Yeah. That'd
Weird,
be
but
interesting to.
we'll have to look more into that because I remember seeing that article and stuff like that, and it actually worked. And I was like, maybe hopefully get into that. But
Yeah.
all right, one of our big topics today.
Yeah. Back to the virus. All right.
Yeah.
Well, so one thing that I thought was interesting, it was some of the knowledge levels between certain kids, and I wanted to talk about how we should talk about the virus with the kids because I mean, and I meant knowledge level about the virus. So, my own daughter, like, was at the playground at the beach the other day. So, my wife and daughter went to the beach just on a average Saturday. It wasn't very packed, of course. Everyone's social distancing, all that. And we went to the playground, and the playground was pretty empty. And my daughter was running around on the play structure and largely alone. And all of a sudden, a kid showed up, and she immediately, once she realized a kid was close to her, clasped her hand over her mouth and just like was like frozen with fear and like just immediately walked back to my wife. And so
You trained her well.
well, no, well, the thing is that she was under the assumption that that was going to help block the germs from the other kid.
Yeah.
And it was like a good, fair response, but like the part that I'm trying to get to really is that it's like more like no, it's that a mask protects them versus you, and that girl wasn't wearing a mask, so you should stay away from her, but you don't need to do that. Like, and it's a social thing, all of a sudden you see a kid do that, all the other kids are like, what's wrong with that one, and so it is interesting, and my daughter knows a lot about the virus because I talked with it about it. And so then with our students, we have students that come in from families. I heard from one teacher, there was one student that I had to constantly remind to pull their mask over their nose. Talk to their teacher. It was a young kid, first grader. And they're like, that's how it's modeled at home. They had parent-teacher conferences and just the whole time, just, we call it the sniffer, just with your sniffer hanging out. And it's unfortunate, but in my classroom, I have to tell him, pull it up. I'm concerned about my own health. I've got asthma. I don't need to deal with that. So it is interesting. So I talk to the kids because I can't trust that they're getting this education at home. And so I figured that we could talk about it, good methods about talking to kids, and it could probably be used for other situations, in places that have floods or, disasters. When bad things happen, how do we talk to kids? And when bad things happen, I think that gentle honesty is always kind of the best approach with kids. Knowing what their reactions could be is just a basic thing that teachers, educators, parents, should do, and that when they are presenting new information that might be shocking to a kid. So, all right, well, they might be all right with it. They might freak out. Either way is fine. Be prepared to deal with it when it happens. Yeah. And so I will talk to kids, whole classroom, and a whole classroom these days is, 8 to 12, but a whole classroom full of kids, and just be like, yeah, there was a school nearby that they got shut down because the virus is out there. So when you're hanging out with kids outside, you got to practice social distancing, cover your mouth as much as you can, because I like to give them the light at the end of the tunnel, and let them know that there is something they can do about it, and that it's not this hopeless thing that, that eventually is going to overtake them, because there are some kids, and perhaps me as a kid too, would have internalized hearing all this bad news all the time, and, kind of have a freak out where I'm just like, oh man, like, how am I going to avoid this? Like, I don't know about you, but when I was a kid and I figured found out that everyone's going to die, I'm just sort of like, oh, how am I going to avoid this someday?
That's the first death in supposedly the Mexican culture, or some of the culture, one culture in Mexico, that when you first learn that you're going to die is your first death.
Ah, interesting.
Which is really weird. And I've heard it said another way too, that your first death is when you actually die, and your second death is when your last death is when the last person speaks your name.
Oh, right.
And then your middle death, I think, is when maybe it's memories, something like that. It was something. The one I know it from is when you first initially think you're going to die, know that this is finite.
Yeah.
Then your second death is actual death, and then your third is when your name is spoken or the last memory someone has of you, which is just
Absolutely.
heartbreaking all over. It's
Right.
like, it seems horrible. I think of kids like not, sometimes they do get into that. They do feel worried. And
Yep.
I try to become a model for like, I tell them what I'm doing.
Yep.
I tell them there and there, I go, listen, when you leave, I put on these giant gloves and I have these giant gloves that go right to my elbow, and I put them on and I hit the spray and I spray everyone's seat and I make sure to clean up the floors. And I go, I do this to make sure everyone's protected. And I want to tell them that I'm constantly doing this. I want to tell them why we cannot sing in music class, why it has to be 14 feet away and I don't have that space to do that, and why they're spaced 3 feet apart, and why the things I can't get near them to show them a book, and I have to use a camera to show them from a giant screen.
Right.
I want to tell them about my process, and I feel like that'll get them to go, oh, that's the way somebody who's methodical is dealing with this. And
Yep.
maybe it's going to be different than what they're getting from home or even from their own teacher.
I'm glad you I'm glad you do that, because I do something similar where I'm like, so I explain that there was a outbreak nearby, and I say that here in this school, I point to the ventilation. I say that's where the
Yeah.
air goes in. Here, and I point to the outlet or inlet, whatever you want to call it, but like where the air comes in, that's where the fresh air comes in. Homes don't have that, so don't go to someone else's home if you can avoid it. And in between every class, I open the windows, I put a fan in the window, I spray the tables, spray the seats, I wipe it all down. And at someone's home, they don't do that.
Yeah.
So, and show them that we are taking precautions, and you should probably do that too in your own life. So I think that's the best way personally. I think that simple honesty, simple, gentle honesty is the best. And you got to let them know that it is something that we can work on. It's later in life that we realize that our own well-being is reliant upon the general knowledge of the people near us.
Yeah.
Which is disheartening. And so we'll save that for another day for those kids.
Yeah. And I just like, with everything, I love modeling for students, and they can see me and maybe my little idiosyncrasies that I have and stuff. I mean, I read vegan cookbooks. I get ideas.
Awesome.
I get on tangents about certain foods and my health and exercising and all that stuff, and wearing sports coats and stuff like that. But it's really all about taking care of yourself and making sure people see that and saying, hey, that's working for somebody, and there's an appeal to that. If it works for somebody, it can work for you.
Absolutely.
So I
Yep.
feel that can help them out. And if anything, I mean, I feel as teachers we are like that. They look at us as role models, and we can, in things that we do, even the subtlest thing, taking a sip of a drink or something like that, can be like, oh, look at how the person does that. And it's just these tiny little things I know that kids notice, that I noticed in my teachers. They're like, oh, I like the way they did that. It's these tiny little things. And I
Yep.
always feel like I'm on stage and I want to make sure that the way I handle myself around students is the way I feel honestly that I am.
Right. You want to show them a real human being that is in control of their life. And
That definitely takes a lot of precautions and does all these things, and that's natural. It's not natural to put on a teacher fake, persona and then
right.
turn into someone else.
Which is unfortunately pushed upon us new teachers sometimes, where it's like, like don't humanize this. You should just set the expectations and follow. It's like, no, you gotta have some push and bounce back here. So
Yeah. Well, let's transition. We'll do this one will be like really quick. I just want to do a little quick thing with this next little topic. It's I nicknamed it easing into a heartbreak. And that's just because the neighboring town is shut down,
yeah,
school shut down, and we've been getting notifications of certain students in other schools having tested positive. And
And there is this whole thing where it's like where we are, this town to the north
mm,
just shut down the whole school system. The town to the west had a case in a busy school, and it's like, a couple of towns over there got shut down, and up over, and it's like it's real close.
yeah, and the idea of getting into a rhythm that we're doing right now, working hard to get this rhythm back that we've missed for such a long time,
I love this rhythm.
and then having the worst happen, and the stuff that we're great with in person now has to be completely online, and we risk, basically we don't have students captive in a room basically to listen to us, watching us perform. It's going to be once again in this box, trying to get them interested in looking at us with the cheaper cameras and not the professional crew recording us and the hours of video editing and stuff like that. And we're once again back what we're doing. I mean, we're a little bit better, but we're not some of these high end like YouTubers. Like even you just watched one the other day, and
Oh
you're
my
like,
God.
whoa, this person's got a whole crew, and it's just crisp and perfect editing.
Yeah, they're using, just these beautiful cameras that capture all of the light, and, like they have all this money for these resources to do these awesome STEM activities. And I'm a STEM teacher, so it's like I wish I could be as awesome as this, but I have to even tell myself as a full-grown adult, like he's got a budget. Like there's,
Yeah.
he's got this money coming in to afford this because he's advertising certain things, or he's getting this kickback, he's getting views, he's getting all this stuff, and it's like a humble STEM teacher is like, it's hard for us to keep up with the YouTube videos coming out right now.
And the other thing is of teachers holding back, because I did hear this
Yeah,
from somebody. They said, well, we're going to be going virtual anyways, so I'm not putting all my effort into this right now. And that whole idea of not like
yeah.
getting a chance to be in person with students and not putting everything into something that you may not have for that many more weeks, and then having to go online with where we know most teachers are not putting hardly any effort in online, because they
Well,
do see this almost impossible, like they can't meet the bar that is set by some of the videos that are online. They can't meet that, and they feel they have to meet that, and they just don't want to try it. They said, there's no way I can be like that.
right, like, and that's so I mean I had a couple of moments like that where I'm like, well, why don't I just link to this other person, and it is that human connection,
Mm-hmm.
and also that like the kids learn different things from a YouTube video than a person that they know in real life. So it is certainly that aspect of it as well. But it's so unfortunate though, because like, yeah, teachers can hold back. Um, I don't even have time to hold back. So I think that's a luxury for people. I am putting everything that I've got, and without going into too much detail, I still don't even have a budget this year.
Yeah.
And so I'm working with paper and tape and like, things, just trying to be interesting, trying to have an impact on their life, to have a memory with these students, and just, you know, give them some real world skills. And even all the way down to like kindergarten and first grade, I'm letting them play with these things just to build up their finger strength and all this stuff. And it's like some teachers are holding back.
Mm-hmm.
And by holding back, the students are affected. And I don't think that's a good long-term mission.
Yeah. And so that's kind of like the big thing for this, is that we're kind of easing into our heartbreak of this
Yeah.
possibly going to that. So for those of us that are actually putting the effort in, and those that are not, it feels even worse for us that, all of this effort is going to be in, and then it's going to be closed off. And I'm trying to do everything that can move online very easily.
Yep.
So kind of bridging that. but it definitely online it's cold.
It's cold. That's a good
It's just
description.
not. It's not a person there working off an audience. Telling
Yes.
jokes to a camera in like a dead room is not the same as telling a joke and having someone laugh or getting that cue that maybe I should go this direction, maybe I should talk about this, maybe this would be great now.
Feeling out the crowd.
You don't have that teacher intuition when
Yeah.
you're basically doing a camera. You're just kind of throwing things out there, and if you're talking for more than 2 minutes, it gets very difficult to hang on when someone can push a button to pause or erase. And yeah,
Yeah,
that's
it's
the
true.
hard thing.
Yeah, it is true. And so, what do you think? What do you think would happen this time if we went online?
Well, it's going to be different. Definitely going to be. I think we're going to be doing Zoom lessons. I think we might be doing. I don't know if we're going to do our own Zooms. I think we might be part of Zooms again, but I think it's going to be all of our
Yeah.
e-learning that we've kind of helped out make our own Seesaw, Google Classroom accounts, but hopefully we have more investment this time. It's just going to be another thing where the balance is going to be off, and those that are already online might already have this like advantage than those that are actually teaching hybrid right now. But
It's so unfortunate, but like there is like this is really working out for the kids with means, kids with access to support structure.
mm-hmm.
It's really, really hurting those without support structures and
Yeah,
means. And even the best meaning kid with the best positive attitude that wants to learn, put him in a house with no internet, put her in a house that doesn't have a parent that knows how to operate a Chromebook,
yeah,
and you know it's all is lost for that child for that length of time. And so it is sort of like it is an interesting world. It's very unfortunate, and it's weird to be aware of that. I'm trying really hard for equity, but I'm also I have to be aware of those kids with means do need assistance and help too. They need guidance.
yeah.
And it's just unfortunate to keep that in the back of your mind. But I mean, as any educator should, you got to be thinking about equity and making sure things are equal for all. And to know it though, and know, all right, well, the kids that have internet right now that have a device, we weren't able to get every device to all the kids, but at least the ones with it are going to be able to do my lesson this week, and it's an interesting feeling.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, I I think that's going to be our show.
No,
We're going to end on a low note, but I
what
mean,
happened? Did we get the notification?
yeah, yeah.
Oh,
But yeah. So Zoom does these things every now and then, but we tell us what you think about this, and we are pretty positive. I think about it. I think we're positive about our situation at the school. It's just
oh yeah.
we like what we're doing, and we're glad to see our students. It's just unfortunate that we find ourselves in this mess. And
I think that we love our job. We rise to the challenge. We will meet whatever it is that we got to do. And if tomorrow there was an earthquake and all the buildings got leveled, I would still try to do something to help the kids in the neighborhood.
yeah,
Like that's just who we are as educators. And I think that's, ultimately we have that in the back of our minds, even though, all this crazy stuff is happening. And even just talking about reality brings us down. That's just one of those times. That's
yeah.
what 2020 is.
We're basically looking at things as like, well, it's just going to be a lot of chaotic whatever. But have we adapted in the past? Yes. Are we going to adapt again? Yes.
Yep.
We're just hoping the spacing between these adaptations can be a little bit further apart than be so close together, because we have to adjust and keep it and make it our own, basically. So,
That's right.
well, have a good night, everybody. I'm Mr. James,
And I'm Mr. Ritchie.
and we are the
The
educators.
educators.
Have a good night.
too.